Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. Guest today is Wells Jones, a man who's loves storytelling and a deep commitment to preserving the human experience. Wells began with the U.S. Navy Antarctic Pararescue Team, where he trained in precision skydiving, glacier rescue, and Antarctic survival, becoming just the seventh person to freefall over the South Pole. From there, he pursued the arts, graduating from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts before performing on stage and screen, and eventually producing more than 100 major live events at venues including the Kennedy Center, the Lincoln Center, and internationally in Saudi Arabia. Alongside his longtime collaborator, Miles Spencer, Wells has spent decades exploring history from the ground up, retracing T.E. Lawrence's journey across the Middle East, an experience that became an award-winning novel, A Line in the Sand, followed by their latest book, Havana Famiglia. Today, through Reflekta, Wells dedicated his work to helping veterans preserve and share their stories while they're still here to tell them. Wells, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here.
An honor to be here, Michael. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Very
Yeah,
much.
so am I. And, I have a funny question to ask you. Have you ever had your genetics tested?
No.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is is there an adventure gene? like,
Look, my mother said,
but you must have it.
well, I clearly do. And my mother said to me when, I don't know at what point, it was before I left home. She was, no, it was afterwards, actually. She said, what is it about being in the wilderness? I mean, there's no one else in the family who's doing that. I said, Mother, you went with your dad in the Pacific Northwest fur trapping.
Oh,
As a kid, he made your own skis. You raced against Gretchen, whatever her name was, the German woman that eventually won the Olympics.
wow.
And you were what, 15 years old? So maybe a piece of this comes from you.
Wow. That's awesome. So maybe there's a slightly genetic component there transmitted down the family.
Good.
With your mom, who knows, and now is with you. So I'd love for us to kind of step back earlier in time.
Mhm.
What led you, first of all, into the Navy, then how from the Navy to the Antarctica and free falling into the South Pole? Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that story.
Well, quickly, I am from a large family. There are two sets of twins, and my brother was born on my first birthday. So there are six children within 6 years of age, all born. My father was in the military. He was an officer in the Army. He did Korea, and he was a general's aide, a captain, a general's aide. He did very well there. It ended up really messing him up. But we were born on different bases in the United States. I was born in Stuttgart, Germany. So there's been a lot of travel and a lot of adapting. Very early on, we ended up in South Carolina. I have no idea why we were there, but we certainly came to this foreign land called Vermont with 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 very heavy Southern accents, and that didn't fly. And this is 1964.
Wow.
And so when they asked me my name and I said, "Hi, Jones," who is this guy? And so it was a very rural place, and the high school that served it was my graduating class was 31,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and that was 5 towns. So my father took his life when in 1966. We were all very young. I was 11, sisters 13, and a brother, 10, and then another set of twins at 8. And so it was right at that same time, not long after his passing, that my mother said that we need a door on the side of the barn. I think you can do it. And she handed me, I said, yes, ma'am. And she handed me a U-Ban coffee tin of bent nails. And she said, now you straighten these nails. And once you've finished using all of these, we'll see about getting more. So from 11, about 6 weeks after my father had passed on, my life has been, when I look back on it, I have a lot of years to look back on, Michael. It's adapting. Your show is Resilience Reimagined. And I will say resilience is evolution. And we'll get into that.
Yeah.
At 15, I wanted to run away from home. I had just been to a camp. I had been selected. It was a brilliant move. Somebody, I guess my history teacher, pointed me out and said, let him go to an encampment for citizenship. It was an international camp. So at 15 years old, I was in Billings, Great Falls, Montana for the summer with people from all over the world. They were my age. I was actually the youngest. And when I got home, uh, I, school was going to start. And I said, Mom, I'm leaving. And she said, and where are you going? I said, Charles said I could go live with him. I have friends now. And she said, you're going to go live in Harlem. I said, well, he said I could. This is 15 years old, year's 1970. And she said, I'll tell you what, young man, if you can't deal with where you are, you have no business putting your foot forward, and stop commenting on everything. You don't understand these people. These are New Englanders. Look around you. Look at what is, you've got this field, you've got the barn, you've got the mountains, you've got the river right there. Stop commenting. Don't run away and see the beauty. It's right here. Big moment. Next big moment. And I'm giving you these because these are the foundational, this is the structure
Yeah.
to my movement forward. And it's a mom, and there was no dad. And there was a family, and it was, the capacity, the adapting to a family without a father. And that was all continuously growing, and it had its challenges for sure. But at 17, I did stay in the town. At 17, just before graduating, I read a Churchill quote. There's some static in the line. Are you hearing me okay?
Be fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, super. The quote that I read that really sunk in deep and stayed with me to this day, I'll read it. To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they're figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do something very special, unique to them, and fitted to their talent. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. That, Michael, just went into my soul. I was, the year 1970, I graduated school, and then 73, I was not drawn to marijuana. I wasn't, I was drawn to the rivers. I was drawn to the mountains. I was drawn to painting our house. I mean, I started working at 11,
Yeah.
you know, and when it came time with graduation, my mother said, I know you're not planning to go on to school. The closest school was actually Dartmouth, which where we lived, and Hanover. And that was the cultural center. Anything that we had that was cultural, we would go to. Back then, it was called Hopkins Center, at Dartmouth College. And she said, your father was in the army. Da, 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 da. She never talked against my father. She never said to me, don't be like your dad. He took his life. He left a family of children. Rather, I'll just say that and let it sit. But she never blamed him for anything. She loved him. She felt it was his last, straw. He had a lot of demons. And anyway, she said, I think you're a Navy man. I think you should go into the Navy. And that's what I did. Well,
Okay. I rewind just a moment. So first of all, I'm really sorry about your father.
yes.
But I had a question about your kind of teenager life. But why did she pick you for the Navy? Like,
She said, I just see you in white. I see you, you're disciplined. I see you as an officer. And I see you, there are many different avenues you can go within that. Well, why don't you check it out? Because then you can get a GI Bill. Because money just didn't exist for us. it was, genteel poverty. We had lovely things. We ended up having an incredible home that we built, that we restored. 40 acres of land, that river, the mountains, a canoe, some things. But I said, okay. And it was like, she's saying that I can do this. I am not going to stay in this town. There is nothing for me here. I've seen enough. I've been to New York City. Not that I've been to Great Falls, Montana, but the process of getting to Great Falls, Montana back then was just enormous, Swedish, Israeli, Palestinian, Spanish Harlem, New York City, New Rochelle. You just named the young people that were so vibrant because they were the thought leaders in their school and they were asked to be a part of this camp. And so I went through A school, and the chiefs at the end of the class, the training, were giving out orders, and they said, "Okay, we got the orders. And you go, Diaz, you're going to go to the Kennedy ship. So and so, you got the submarines. Jones, good. God." He shows it to the guy next to him. I'm going, and he turns it upside down on the table and goes on with the 15 other people. Okay, Jones, you're going to one of the most beautiful places in the world, Chi-Chi. And I go, Chi-Chi, what's that? He said, Christchurch, New Zealand, son. I said, okay. Well, I had no idea, you know. He said, you're going to be a part of Antarctic Development Squadron 6. They fly planes for the National Science Foundation, and you'll be a part of that crew. They're home based in California, and the staging base is Christchurch to go to McMurdo, Antarctica. And they call it the ice. Son, I hope you're ready. And I'm just going, come, bring it on. And so it was that's how it was. And when I got there the first night, it was after the new year. I went on leave. After the new year, I arrived there. And the people were just slowly coming back from Antarctica. The season is from early October to the middle of February. And so I'm at the end of January, middle of January. And someone said, why don't you go to the enlisted men's club and meet some of the guys? Someone said, yeah, come with me. So I did that night. And someone was sitting at the table. We were drinking 2% beer. Can you imagine? I'm not a drinker, but 2% is pretty low. Anyway, he had wings on his chest and they were gold. And I said, what's that? He said, parachute. For what? I'm a member of the Antarctic Pararescue Rescue Team. I hesitated. And he goes, are you interested? I said, yeah. And so I applied. There was an opening. I went through training and I became an Antarctic Pararescue Team member.
So I didn't
And
ask about that, but let me go back, if you don't mind, like a few years prior to.
wherever you like.
Yeah, after your father's suicide, like retrospectively, would you say you learned about yourself during that period of time before the Navy? Like,
I learned that I could take care of myself. I learned that I could be the youngest, the skinniest, you know, the boy that's asked to, okay, you know what a hod of bricks is? A hod of bricks?
I do not.
Well, it's a contraption that you lift up and it holds 11 bricks, regular bricks. And so I found that if I excelled and did beyond what I was asked, that there was not just approval, but I was paid and it was more enjoyable. So I learned that I knew how to work,
Okay.
And when I said to my mom, why can't Kim mow the lawn? My younger brother, a year younger. She said, Kim's just not built that way. What? Come on, we're young. So I go to Kim, you mow it. You want me to mow it? Yeah, you mow the lawn. This is Vermont and it was country and we're actually trying to clear almost a hay field and what does he do? He does a big peace sign in I'm going, man, you got to go back and forth. And he just said, you do it. So I learned that there are, even with the people in my family, that people are individuals and that they do and they feel and think the way they feel and think, and that I don't have to convince them what I think.
Yeah.
And so I went into the service boot camp was a joy. Push-ups, no problem. Two claps in between, it was just like I was ready. And it wasn't because these days, if you're going to be in the SEAL team or go to BUDS, I mean, you really get it. But I was just available. And that's what my mother says, live in the moment, see the best and
So
go.
you bypass being a hippie, but you pick up the most important message from that generation. You know.
Well, I had a little of that.
Oh,
Some of the, a couple of the girlfriends were very open to, you
that's
know,
cool.
relationship. Absolutely,
It's just
feathers and flowers in their hair, music everywhere.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you like on the resilience piece of things, you really learn how resilient you were, especially in the workspace in your teenage years. Um,
Well, it's enduring and it was strength. And I realized that those were physical things, but resilience is more, and it evolved into what's inside, not what you're carrying on your back in the load or your DD 214, your performance. It's beyond that into who are you and can you uphold that? You say you're a sovereign gentleman. Let's talk about that for a moment. I mean, what does that mean? A sovereign.
you've done your due diligence. That's good. Yeah.
And
Are you asking?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. I want to hear it from you,
Yeah.
as much as you'd like to say,
So
because I resonate with it, but I don't know.
yeah. So, and I just want to be clear. I think sovereignty is a developmental process. There's degrees of sovereignty, and the way I would
Mhm.
define it is someone who recognizes the cultural, social, political, family of origin, ethnic, religious programming that has influenced the way they were raised and they see the world. But they're able to see that as programming, not necessarily, and it could be necessarily, but not necessarily who they are internally as a human being. And in fact, the sovereignty means they're free from all the programming. Now, they could choose to incorporate by choice all those or some of those or a bit of those.
Pieces.
But
Mhm.
there's a choice in that. They're not just a robot who has been. And
Right.
when I say there's degrees of it, it can take a lot of time to start seeing your own programming from those different cultural forces, unwind it, and figure out, oh, this is who I really am underneath, and this is a social programming. That's why I don't think it's a black and white thing. Like I'm free or I'm not. I
Right.
think
Right.
degrees of
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's terrific. I get it.
Okay.
And there's a mastery. The mastery over self is just like identifying self is right up to the end in my thought. You know, becoming is forever.
Yes.
And this process that you're talking about is such a worthy thought instead of just allowing the dictates of so much. I found that out like in acting with commercials. I finally stopped doing commercials. I was asked, I don't know if you remember
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
the Marlboro Man, and the guy's a cowboy and he's
Yeah,
got his
yeah,
old
yeah.
thing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well, they went to rescue and I was in New York and I was a part of that auditioning being asked because they knew that I was pararescue and I was young and, back then call it white bread, you know, blonde and blue and, all American dude, he can hang out of a helicopter and I've done a lot of that. And I said, no. And that's when I realized, no, I do not want to promote cigarettes. Did I smoke? Yeah, I smoked
Mm.
cigarettes once in a while. Especially, I loved it if I could smoke a cigarette on stage, which we used to do back in the day. I mean, that was just like the coolest of cool, just to light up a cigarette, on stage. And now everything is so covered with, special e-cigarettes and stuff like that.
Mm.
But taking a stand and it came to the roles that I was offered. And I said no. I mean, they were light in terms of violence compared to what the levels of violence, because I had kids, I had children, I had boys, young boys. And I said, if you want a gun, first of all, let's look at the headlines. Let's see, what war does. Now, if you want this, absolutely, but let's be responsible. It's not just about paintball. It's not just about, you know, bang, I got you, you're dead. And I said, that was, epiphany. So it was pulling out of that and pulling out of, I really worked at the concept of the American dream. It's the I had the beautiful wife, had beautiful kids, had a big house. It was like maintaining it and keeping it all together. And that's when the thought was going, instead of in service, it was about how can it get me what I want. And so service has become really the through line that has mattered to me in everything I do. It's adventure with purpose. There's purpose always.
Is your service spiritually driven? Where does that ethos come from for you?
Absolutely. Well, it's there. It's just organic to me. That's what I discovered, like you're saying, finding that sovereign, that thought that's within that can stand up and say, no, I agree to disagree.
Hmm. Hmm.
No, I'm not going to do that. And so I've gone from, the military service, and on my way out the door, my commanding officer said, I'll give you any place in the world. I had plenty, of accolades and achievements, lists of achievements. And he said, I know you want to fly jets. You're 6'3", your eyes are bad, and that's not going to happen. And so that's out. And then when my mother said, why don't you go into acting? I was like, really? She said, you're grandmother I saw you in 12th Night. I said, Mom, I was Duke Orsino's attendant. I didn't have any lines. And she said, you should go into acting. And I did. Said, okay, I'll try it. I'll go to school, see how it works. Well, I ended up in New York with a repertory company that was Lee Strasberg's son, and it was just incredible. And I was the young male ingenue that was in New York with Mirror Repertory Company. And it was from just committing and seeing the good, the beauty in the moment. And I wasn't moaning or bemoaning, why can't I jump out of plane? Why can't I keep doing that? Why didn't I do? It was like, focus on where you are. That's the mission.
I'm really, and I want to talk about the acting. I still want to talk about the pararescue stuff too. Your mom sounds pretty amazing. Like she's nailed two things
Absolutely.
like like prescient. Like she could see your future of some sorts or another.
She just understood my core.
Yeah.
And if I got off track, our arguments, we didn't argue, but she would say, you damn well better get back on track. And in the beginning, I was like, what are you talking about? But I knew she just, and I gather she did that in different ways with 5 other brothers and sisters.
Wow. Just sounds amazing. Before we jump into the acting, and it's just interesting. I want to comment on the acting, but I also want you to kind of share more of your story. But what I found is actors, actors have a somewhat deeper understanding of the sovereignty piece because they recognize that they're actually playing roles.
Mhm.
And what's really interesting is like that's true for real life.
Yeah,
It's not just on the stage. Like take that and apply it to your life.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Back to the pararescue. So, what was that training like for you? What did you learn? Why did you decide to be? Was it one of the first 7 of only 7 people to do the jump? Like, talk to us a little about that too. That part of your life.
With the most important piece, other than the physical ability and mental capacity that they judged, was skydiving. And it was skydiving. It wasn't a static line. It was static line for the first, I think I had 6, maybe 7 static lines. And then it was always precision free fall, because we were parachuting into, we called them mishaps in Antarctica. We flew C-130 Hercules aircraft and twin jet engine UH-1N helicopters. Helicopters had a range, could go so far and then have to come back. And then, of course, uh, we had the C-130s that were flying missions to the South Pole and to all different stations that were around in 19. I was there in 74, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7. Uh, we so we trained the parachuting, skydiving, precision was essential. And then the medical training, physical training was standard, really intense physical training. It was a lot of running. It was a lot of climbing, scrambling up walls, dry walls, or ice falls. And so it was just learning,
Yeah.
learning, learning the trade. And the beauty of that was that a lot of what our lessons, the place where the lessons came from, were the Kiwis. Scott Base is the New Zealand headquarters that's just in McMurdo as well. And those fellows were just the real McCoy. Now we're talking, Michael, we're talking 1974. We're still wearing the same thing Hillary was wearing going up Everest. There was no Pac Light. There was no Gore-Tex. There was ripstop nylon, you know, silk, wool, Dachstein gloves, big, thick, worsted wool things. Boots were just coming out. The mountaineering boots that we ended up getting. I had a triple layer boot, and it was German made. And so the equipment was new and the adventure was endless. And it was putting ourselves in situations like on the polar plateau at the South Pole and camping out, skydiving in, dropping a container, simulating a mishap, an aircraft. There was a major mishap that came that had two downed planes in the end, and it was at Dome Charlie. Anyone can look it up. Dome C, and I was on that rescue. And we did not jump in; we landed, but it was epic. The whole uncertainty of it.
Did the Soviets have any bases down?
Yes, Vostok, Vostok. Where's my? I have my jump log out because I just came back from Normandy doing a parachute jump into D-Day, and the I have a stamp from Vostok, which was the place. A pair of Levi's jeans would get you a bear skin hat that was just unbelievable, you know? And it was a wonderful exchanging meeting, not being able to talk Russian, but, just still that exchange was wonderful. The South Pole jump came about with two things that were just simultaneously connected. Our chief that was on the team was also the people that trained me and several others during this time of parachuting were former shooting stars. Shooting Stars was the Navy demonstration demo team, parachuting team, like the Golden Knights. We hear a lot about the Golden Knights lately, but Shooting Stars was that. And so we had just the best instruction, and it was very specific. It was pararescue for Antarctica. So it was the medical training, the physical training, the knowledge of what to do, and just, there's nothing there, Michael. There what you carry inside you is probably what's as equally as important as anything on your back. So you've got to have a very level head. So Chief Spaulding, Dick Spaulding, had 999 jumps. And he had jumped at the South Pole before. He was like number 3. And he wanted to jump at the South Pole. He put it into the commanding officer. There was a lot of press was coming down. There was a U.S. team coming down to assess the Antarctica research program. They're supposed to be at the South Pole. They actually weren't there when we jumped. The team, there were senators and There was the Christian Science Monitor, Wall Street Journal, some heavy papers, there. And we were testing navigational aid. It was the first time that we were going to go out on a green light. We always did our own spotting, and we would do our spotting at a certain altitude and go up to 12.5 AGL. So we're really, we spent a lot of time doing 45-second, 60-second delay jumps and then landing on the spot. So that's how it was brought about. And we did. And it was epic. It was epic.
Did the sorry, you're
Well,
sure fine.
the C-130 was very cold at altitude coming in. The hydraulics to the tail ramp were frozen. And so we decided we would hand pump the tail ramp open in order to go out the tail ramp. We never went out the side door. We always had an open, full, huge view to look down and to do what we wanted to do. We could go out en masse. We used to have SEAL team guys in California jump with us. And so we would have a whole just great, great time with jumping at high altitude, not above 15,000, but in that range. And so it was minus 59 degrees. It was the aircraft speed was 125 miles per hour. And so we were jumping into that, and we really wanted to know how cold it was because it was pretty amazing. So at the end, we asked the crew chief, this guy, he was funny. Say, hey man, you know, what was the temperature? It was cold. He says, we know that. Well, what do you want to know? What was the temperature when we jumped out at altitude? Said minus 59, minus 60. And so it was a wonderful experience. We needed that. And then we ended up jumping on the polar plateau yet another time and camping out and doing a whole mission. The thing that was the biggest lesson with the service was really handling ego.
Okay.
And that was probably the biggest lesson because I had enough achievements. I felt pretty, as they say, shit hot, you know, and things are really like going my way and with some of the guys, but I just felt kind of, we had done a jump with the Blue Angels, which was back in the day. That was, the Shooting Stars used to do it, but we were asked to do it. Shooting Stars weren't in existence. And so because of our guys, and then, and that was wonderful. And so there came a day where Troxel was teaching Deering how to jump master. Paul and I were climbing mates. And so Paul approached the aircraft. He got in on the left side. Troxel got in on his knees in the middle. And I sat in the door. And I sat in the door and I was like ready to swing my feet in. And I thought, don't have.
Yeah.
This is before all the movies where everybody just runs up, sits in, and off they go. I thought, oh, this is cool. I'm fine. You know? So our pilots are just as maverick. I mean, everybody that was selected to do this duty work, these are the guys that didn't make jet school, the pilots. Now, the helicopter pilots, it's a different story, but they were still major, very advanced. They were willing to do this service. And so they just take off. Well, we're on our way for a streamer run, and the guys are looking out the door, and I'm just watching them going, okay, they're cool, they got it. I'm just dealing with my own world. And suddenly the helicopter does a sharp right bank. I slide out the door. My right foot caught the skid. I bent my knees. My left leg went, my knee was almost down the skid. And I was trying to get back into the helicopter. And they leveled off. And I was shaking. I was frightened beyond belief. It was a cold sweat. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is crazy. You don't have to do this. And I go, no, 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 I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. No, no, that was stupid. That was stupid. I didn't cable in. I just sat in the door. And we're going over the Camarillo Mountains. I don't know if you know California, it's north of Malibu. Camarillo. And yeah, it was probably, 1,000 feet in the air, not enough to pull a chute. I just would have died if I had not all banked myself in. And I'm sitting there shaking and saying, "Hey, you all right? Drones." And I just gave him a thumbs up. It didn't even turn around. And I didn't know what to do because I was just, and then I said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And the answer came with transportation. Transportation. I'm a member of the Antarctic Pararescue Team. And this is country that there's someone in need down there. And that's why I'm on the team. That's why I'm parachuting. And my whole life came back in me. And it was ego. It was just a sense of self and putting my thing, I don't have to do that. This is cool. I mean, we did a lot of crazy things that you see people do. They're climbing around the aircraft and thinking like they're falling off. And the young, junior officer that's out training, he just freaks them out, as we just play around with people's heads. And hey, we're 20 years old.
Say more about the ego, because you mentioned one of the lessons learned is ego.
Well, it was my ego that put me in that spot. It was my lack of focus. It was my focus on this is cool. I can handle this. No different than being in the dry valleys in a place where I'm following Paul again and a Kiwi climber that I thought he didn't like me. I was going, why is he being such a dick? And he says, "Hey, follow me, Paul. Let's go." And we're in the dry valleys, and there's a place called the dais. It's a chair, and either side, 1,000, 1,200 feet below is a valley, right? Valley and Taylor Valley. But this is the nose. And so Stu drops down, the Kiwi guy, below the nose and says, "Follow me." So it's just solo. There's no ropes. We're just scrambling. He's first, Paul was second, I was third. I got stuck. My whole mind had been on, why, this guy's such a dick. What is it? It wasn't on where I was
Yeah.
and when I got stuck. So I call that ego. I call that I wasn't focused. And I got so bad, and it seemed like it was so long that I was stuck that I started shaking. You call it sewing machine legs. And and you can't hold onto the thing. And all of a sudden I hear my name was Tad. My mother had a nickname for me. Tad. And I knew it was Stu, the guy that, you know, I didn't like him. He didn't like me. Move your left hand 6 inches. Move your right. I was out. You saved me. And I looked at him and I thought of all the crap that I had been thinking about him. He saved me. At one point, I looked between my legs. I said, if I let go, the pain will stop. I've been on some military podcasts, and some guy says, I've been there. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's just like suddenly, and just a flip of the clock. Suddenly you're stuck. I call that was my ego. It was ego.
With the conversation you had inside your own head about the Kiwi,
Correct.
what did you learn about those conversations we have with ourselves are not necessarily related to reality?
I've learned to say stop. I really have. And it's been a while. Stop. And my focus is just on different things. Stay tuned into the present moment.
The lesson I'm
And
hearing you learn.
and these are young lessons. I've gone on to produce, to act in big shows, to have responsibility into producing. I couldn't feed my family doing theater in New York. I loved it. So my wife and I created a production company. And with that production company, we ended up doing shows at the Kennedy Center. We had several shows, and we ended up doing shows at Lincoln Center and around New York, and then in LA, and then in London, moving over to London, then moving to Saudi Arabia, not moving to, but moving on to those opportunities. And they were all taps. Would you be interested in da 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 da? And I, if they're asking me, they think I can do it. And I've never done it. I was asked to be the chief operating officer of a foundation in Washington, D.C. Alma Powell, Colin's wife, was the chairman of the board. The president and founder of it was Bill Bennett's wife. I'm saying all these wives and husbands. I don't know. There's a lot of names, and it doesn't matter. But what matters is that I was tapped, and they said, "We want you to be the chief operating officer." I had never run a foundation, and I never had sat at a desk all day, ever.
Similar to the common theme I hear is other people see what you're capable of before you even know that you're capable of doing things. So I'm thinking of your mother, go fix the barn, like go take care of this. That theme seems to continue on.
It is. It has right to this day.
Yeah.
To this day with Reflekta, the business that I'm in, and creating space. I handle the military. It is discovering Round Canopy Parachuting Team USA and saying, well, it's been 50 years since I've jumped. Why don't I go down to Berlin outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico? They've got a runway. They've got some things happening. Take a course, reintroduce yourself. And that was, a year and a half ago. And now I just got back 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago from jumping in Normandy, celebrating D-Day and the young lives and the greatest generation. And so it's taps, and it's being willing to accept. It's willingness. It's not fearlessness. It's not courage. It's not, those things happen, but you have to be willing first
Mhm.
to take the step. And with that willingness, there has to be a level of trust, faith. Yeah, I believe in God. Yes, I believe there's a divine, you know, overview for sure.
I have to imagine for you it's both faith and experience because you've had so many experiences to show you that you're capable of these things that I would imagine to kind of build on each other.
And that's the resilience has come with each level, but it's a different understanding of resilience from not just enduring or building strength, getting through it, you know, it is what is happening inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's owning that and standing up for that. It's in service to others, no longer about surviving.
Mhm.
And now it's about stewardship, resilience in stewardship. You've got the resume, but what's behind that resume? And is there something that you can give back?
Do you, I mean, it sounds like it's a calling because for you, it's really deeply internal. Do you have a belief that everyone has not your calling, but has their own unique calling and they just need to learn to be quiet enough or have the experiences that help bring it out of them?
I think being quiet and listening will help people reach another level in their life, certainly.
Do you have various spiritual practices that you do to allow that material to come to conscious awareness, to be expressed in your life? Are you a meditator? Do you pray? Do you have those kind of practices?
I have meditation in motion. For a long time, I've done solo summits, uh, sunrise summits. So when there's different sections of life, but when I got back into the thought about the mountaineering, the things that I've done, it was like, all these, and then having people that I know that have done Everest or done some pretty intense things, wonderful things, expressions, rigorous physical expressions that they survived. They lived through. They came home. They did it. They came home. What would it be like when I was living in Golden with the family? Where that's when we had family. Now kids are college and children and all this stuff. And what would it be like going up Bierstadt in time for the sunrise? It's no different than Everest. I mean, they do start at 11, try to get up, and from base camp, or not from base camp, camp 4, wherever they are. And I decided to do it alone. And that was an act that scared the heck out of me, particularly in California because of the mountain lions and different things. But I did have a dog. I had at that time a black lab,
Mm.
and she was great. So there was a companion sometimes. I mean, Callie would do the mountain twice, and it was like, where is she? You know, and and I had to work through that. But really, working through inner fears, coming to Santa Fe and doing the mountain here is Baldy. It's 12.6, and it is 7 miles, just under 7 miles in and 7 miles out. And I have over 100 sunrise summits over the years.
How do you train for these things? Do you have
Doing it. There's no training. I asked the guy that did the Iditarod, and he was in not Golden. Anyway, he was in Colorado, and the Iditarod is the dogs and the sleds. And I said, "What do you do to train?" He said, "I don't train.
just
It's my life.
wow?
It's my lifestyle. That's what I do." And that really stayed with me. So I thought, you know, uh, incorporate this as a part of lifestyle
Mm.
instead of trying to get somewhere. And so you asked about meditation.
Mm.
What did I do this morning? This morning I swam. Yesterday morning I got up at 3:35 and I was at the trailhead at 5 and just scrambled up. Not Baldy, but another one. I brought it down because I just don't have that time to do it. But still, to be in the dark, to have a headlamp, and to hear the bird, and hear life come about. It's like traveling. When I did the Middle East trek miles and I doing treks or going anywhere, I want to get up or sunrise. I want to see the city come alive or the village. I want to see the sunset and I want to hear what happens in the morning. That goes back to acting in New York and going to acting school, and mostly early Sunday mornings after an all-nighter Saturday party and coming down Broadway. But in the 80s, Broadway wasn't on a Sunday, was closed. I mean, it was quiet. It was just the street sweepers and garbage and backing up gears and stuff like that, and there was no one around, you know? It was quiet, and I thought, "Oh, love this." It's like watching a market, watching a farmer's market come alive in the morning, and people that come in, at dark, and they set up their carts or they set up their I like that activity.
I love that.
So meditation in motion is really what it is, because that's where I ground myself, and that's where I receive. And I do Wim Hof, I do the breathing, and I do jump in cold,
Okay.
and I do the breathing every morning before I do anything else. So if it's it doesn't matter what time in the morning, I like to connect that way.
Yeah, it's when you said, "Yeah, I do the top the baths." I'm like, "You spend time in Antarctica. Do you really need to do ice baths?" Like,
I don't know if there's any colder water. Oh, when I see the guys that go in underneath, uh, a friend of mine, I will call him a friend, Chris Thrall. Chris Thrall is a elite British guy, SAS. I don't know the specific field. He just got back from Everest. He was the last person that got to the top of Everest this season. I'm talking 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks. Where are we? 3 weeks ago. And there's a Sherpa that was missing for 6.5 days. And that Sherpa was with Chris, and they were separated. And then, weather, number of things happened, and they declared the Sherpa dead because of the location where he was. And Chris was off the mountain. He was going to the family, talking with the family. They were setting up all the funeral. The guy appeared. He crawled out of there. It is an amazing story of this man. His name is Hilary Dava. And Chris said when I did a podcast with him, it was right after he had boat crossed the Atlantic. Before that, he had scuba dived, went deep in Antarctica.
Was the rowboat across the Atlantic, was it teams competing against each other?
No,
Yeah. Okay.
it was Chris. He's always doing it for PTSD and for suicide prevention for the military.
That's awesome.
It's all about raising money. And as a matter of fact, the sister boat that was supposed to be with him, the guy sent an email out and he had taken his life just before leaving. And so my work is to give space to, and my meditation is, what do I need to do? What's my next move with my outreach and the people? And that's where I get my answers. And of course, Miles Spencer, who tossed this podcast in my direction, is the co-founder. And Miles and I have done everything. I brought him into skydiving and brought him, we did Normandy a couple of weeks ago, which was, I have never laughed so hard and cried. Being on Omaha Beach, there's nothing commercial about it. Being in these Fameux, being Carentan, being in these towns that just haven't changed since 1944. There are outskirts, of course. There's new buildings, but the villages and the honor that the Normans give Americans, and it's not just the Americans, the Poles, the British, French. And we're jumping with out of the original C-47 planes that dropped the people into Normandy 82 years ago. People, I say, boys,
Yeah, boy.
barely out of their teens, and they jumped in the dark. And what I came to realize, and it's all part of what I'm doing, it was their willingness, not their courage, their willingness to step anyway, to do it.
Yeah. This is a good segue to Reflekta. Can you kind of unpack what you guys are doing? I mean, you start sharing, but like more about Reflekta?
Well, Reflekta is a intergenerational, it's storytelling, legacy, and lessons. Intergenerational, it is private by default. It's set up, a reflection is a person. It's a reflection of a person done with a photograph in a watercolor, turned into a watercolor, recording their voice to that reflection, and then uploading all the information about that person, their life. There's a biography through the years, who they are, what they are. For the keeper, if it's not about that individual, the keeper, the reflection isn't about them, which people can do. And that's what I'm encouraging military, especially special forces and combat military people, to unload crack through their armor, to address what they've been through. And so it is, you can have a dynamic, spontaneous conversation with that reflection. It is not a loaded up story and you ask that question and they give that same answer. This is a spontaneous conversation. I have several demos that I'm doing for large organizations. And in the one demo that I'm doing, it's a military person. I was talking with him and saying his name is Pee-wee, Jim Pee-wee Martin. And then I've got the general, but I've got Pee-wee. He was a private. And he jumped into Normandy. He died at 101 years old. He made a jump at 99 years old, a tandem jump. And he is honored through the groups that I'm with, RCPT USA, Round Canopy Parachuting Team, USA Parachuting Team. And the hangar is called Pee-wee Martin Hangar. So I was talking with him. I was saying, Pee-wee, I was talking away and then I stopped and I was expecting him. First of all, he said, "Hey, Wells, good to hear your voice again. What would you like to talk about today?" And they say, "Well, Pee-wee, you've done really well in slowing down your speech." I was trying to get him to slow down his speech. And this is all AI. I mean, AI is the tool, but it's not the actor. And so Pee-wee, eh, he doesn't, I stop and usually he comes right back, says, oh, sure. Ba, 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 ba. And I realized my window was open and there were birds outside. I closed the window and Pee-wee says, aren't those birds wonderful? He said, you got birds outside your window. Would you close I heard you close the window. So it's an opportunity to have your story, your legacy. You can upload pictures, I've uploaded books that people have written, and then they decide who they share it with. Usually it's for families, you know, it's for brothers, sisters. You can have people add to the story. What about that story? I'm doing this, you can add it. And so then you offer it to people in the family to engage with it. It could be someone that's passed on, a mom, dad, aunt, uncle, brother, sister. It can be yourself. And it's your life that will get passed on in your voice.
Yeah. Yeah. What a beautiful service.
I think the key is that it's in your own voice.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that no one can take away from you or could do after one passes on. And it's not about passing on, it's passing on lessons,
Yeah. I hear that.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Story.
it's more than it's storytelling.
Yeah.
We listen autobiographically, don't we? You tell your story and I'm thinking about your story and how it relates to my story. And then we share, and I have found, like, with the travels that I've done, it's not the events, and the events have been epic. I mean, to do an 8-day sea festival in Saudi Arabia with Formula 2000 boats and 14 countries, hot air balloons, an American company producing this the first time in Saudi Arabia in 2008.
Wow. Okay.
That's a big deal. Saudi Arabia has changed a lot since then.
Yeah.
If you're aware of it, I mean,
Yeah.
Jeddah and Riyadh, but our interest there was to see back in 2006 what was really going on. And so Miles and I, um, it's one of our adventures. We did an 1,100-mile trek through the Middle East to see with our own eyes. We were trained for it. We were trained in risk management and assessment. We were trained, we had insurance.
Good. Which
You know,
countries did you get to travel through?
we followed T.E. Lawrence's path, Lawrence of Arabia's path from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, along the Hejaz, the Red Sea, up to the Gulf of Aqaba,
Yeah.
into Aqaba, all the way up to Damascus. And then we would spin off to different places along the path. And
What year did you say this?
it was in 2006.
So this is before the Syrian civil war and the Arab Spring.
It was, but it was definitely there was no one could understand what we were doing there because no Americans were on the ground. We did not register with the consulates,
Wow.
which our risk assessment guy said, that's not wise. Why are you doing that? And this is a highly recommended fellow. He also gave the same training to Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman for their long way around motorcycle trip. They did 4 different motorcycle trips, but he taught them. He was also a partner at Ackerman International, and he was also private secretary to the Queen of England in the care of Prince Harry and Prince William. So, and he was former SAS. He was a major. He was an Irish Guard. He specialized in checkpoints and in kidnap and ransom. And he downloaded all of that for us. We went through 39 checkpoints.
Syria at that time was a conduit for anti-coalition forces in a crazy time.
It was a crazy time. We got in there. We got our visa just in time to be able to go there. And that was in 06. It was in April of 06. And they had shut it down, but we weren't registered anywhere. So no one knew of us or where we were. We worked out cars to take us from point A to point B, and then they would turn around before we would meet up with another car. So we kept high security through Jamie. We did go across the King Hussein Allenby Bridge on a bus into Israel, and he said, I highly do not recommend that. And we said, Jamie, we want to sit with the people, look in their eyes, and be a part of what's going on. And he got it. And he just said, okay, they're going to get on a bus. Make sure you're on this part of the bus, blah, 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 blah. Look for this, look for that. There's going to be people with guns and, assault rifles. And if someone's out of uniform, back out, get out of there, you know? And I've done podcasts where people have said, well, you go through one checkpoint, you know what's going on. And every checkpoint is different and armed.
Yeah. You're fortunate they didn't think you were with the agency and kidnap you.
That part of the training was very fascinating to me. And again, it's just like, okay, you're going to do a halo jump, and this is what you need to do. Make sure to clip it here. You know, you just follow protocols. And if you don't know them, then you're in trouble. And so we made sure that we knew how to behave in that situation. We did have equipment that was brand new. We had a PLB, a personal locator beacon that was 406 megahertz, and it was brand new, released for people to buy. They had PLBs for oceanic situations, but not just for regular citizens to buy, to have access to that frequency. And so it was said that if we triggered it, it would triangulate with the satellite at the time. I mean, now the skies are so loaded with things, but back then it would have to triangulate, and it would, we're in Saudi Arabia in a desert, and it would go to France, and then it would ping, ping, ping to where there would be instructions as to what to do, and we would only activate it in mortal danger.
Wow. Man. What's the one question I've not asked you that you'd like to answer as we wind up our conversation today?
What motivates you? And I think it's the unknown. It's really what has motivated me is to embrace the uncertainty, because and the resilience to do that, because that's where the art of living, art, music. I've done a lot with music as a producer. I've been blessed, particularly with jazz. And so it is embracing that uncertainty and not getting thrown off course of your track. Like my mother said,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're off track. And I had to learn what that track is. And like you said, you start, whittling away. Not that, not that. This is where I land, you know? And so that curiosity doesn't kill the cat. Curiosity. And people say, well, isn't that a little risky? And I say, not to me. It's not risk that's your definition. So it's been a pleasure talking with you. And I think I've
Well, I'm fascinated by your journey, your insights. I love your mom. She sounds really cool.
fabulous. Yeah.
Where can people learn? Because I know you've written books, and
Yep.
yeah, there's a lot more to your story than we've been able to get to in this last hour. But so, where can people learn more about you and now Reflekta as well? I want you to make sure we get a plug in.
Sure. Let's start with Reflekta. It's Reflekta with a K, REFLEKTA.ai. And I encourage people to go with that. We launched last August in Las Vegas, of all places. It was a great time. It was a great time. But and we're booming. It's wonderful, and the purpose is so clean and intentional to help. So Reflekta, the books are on Amazon. It's Havana Familia. It's a geopolitical love story, the jilted mistress of Cuba, and wonderful researching, a lot of research into that, and being in Havana and getting to know. The book on the Middle East that we did is called A Line in the Sand, and it's a novel, but both books follow Magnus and Finn. Miles is Magnus, I'm Finn, and it's our story through these areas. And we do have a time travel device so that we can go back into history when we, you know, walking through or land in certain places and say, let's see what was going on. And very specifically to bring that to the forefront on how history and the consequences of today. And so that's it. They're adventures with purpose and to understanding. I'm on LinkedIn, Wells Johns. I'm on Facebook right now, heavy with the military people, Wells Johns, as well.
Wells, thank you so much. This is great. I'll make sure to include all that information in the show notes so people can check out the books, reflect you on the various social media channels. Appreciate your time and your story.
Great being with you, Michael. Thank you.